Did you know how much money game developers make on a rip-off game? If you're smart enough to clone Pokémon, it is $1.4 billion in revenue. Good afternoon and welcome to the CCDP10003 news, and I'm your favorite reporter, Jeff. In today's breaking news, are game plagiarism a crime, a craft, or just good old-fashioned capitalism? And our focus today is Palword, the viral sensation from Japanese developer Pokémon. The gameplay blends open-world survival with monster-catching mechanics that feel suspiciously familiar. So much so that Nintendo, famously protective of its IP, has taken legal action, citing intellectual property infringement. But is this really about Pikachu's image, or about Nintendo crushing competition before it evolves? Although it might be a bit too late now considering the concurrent player record Palword has already broken on Steam. Anyways, as the courtroom drama unfolds, one thing's clear. The line between inspiration and plagiarism is blurrier than ever. Now, let's go live to our brave on-site reporter Mabel, who is currently standing on the front line of the case.
Hello Jeff, this is the Tokyo Intellectual Property Court. At this very moment, the trial of the Palword plagiarism case behind me is about to start. Tensions are high, lawyers are caffeinated, and somewhere in the courtroom, someone probably brought a plush Pikachu for emotional sport.
The same judge from the Zelda and Genshin Impact trial. I'm sure you all remember how that went. This can't be good.
Order! Court is now in session. Let's settle once and for all. Is Palword a ripoff of Pokémon? On my right is the defender, Pokémon. On my left is the plaintiff, Nintendo.
Your Honor, let's get straight into it. Palword is just a cheap of Pokémon. It is an innovation. You throw a ball, a creature with a classic Pokémon look pops out. Not just the game mechanics, the pals also look 90% like the Pokémons. For you to better visualize how sus this game is, here's a comparison of Pikachu to the so-called Lovelander from Palword. Tell me this isn't Pokémon, but American. Your Honor, they didn't even try to be subtle.
Objection, and Nintendo. We are proud to call Palword an upgrade rather than a copy, but not gonna lie, one of our chef game mechanic designers is indeed American. Let me ask you, why bother spending time bonding with your Pokemons when you can enslave them with guns and get free labor? Why suffer Pokemon's boring-ass turn-based combat when you can relax and enjoy your pals take down the boss for you? And unlike Pokemon, our game runs above 15 FPS, gives the player much better graphics and smoother real-time gameplay.
Spicy. Proceed.
Thank you, Mabel. You see, some of these plagiarism trials can get quite intense. And over the past decades of video game development, similar cases between giant game franchises pops up every now and then. So, why do people hate game clones? What harm do they bring to our gaming environment? Well, for developers, especially indie studios, cloning can be financially and emotionally devastating. A well-known example involves Threes, a puzzle game built with deep care and balance. Shortly after its release, a near-identical clone, 2048, went viral. While 2048 was free and widely shared, the developers of Threes were left behind, despite having spent over a year perfecting their mechanics. The clone became more famous than the original, causing massive frustration for the real creators. Consumers can also suffer. I guess you all have experiences seeing ads pop up in a mobile app, forcing you to look at trailers of terribly made reskin mobile games. They're usually rushed, lack polish, and can mislead players with similar names and icons. Some even hide malicious code. For instance, several fake versions of Flappy Bird appeared after it was pulled from the App Store, many of them filled with malware and adware. These clones exploit the popularity of the original title without delivering the same creativity. This creates confusion, damages trust in app marketplaces, and can unfairly tarnish the reputation of original developers. So, before getting into the reason why game plagiarism actually exists, how we define it and regulate it, I want you to play a mini quiz with me first and see if you can guess the original game for these game clones. The Great Gianna Sisters. Can you guess what game they were inspired by? How about now with the gameplay? You're right, it was Super Mario Bros. Now, was this game deemed copyright infringement? Well, Nintendo's lawyers swooped in, and the Great Gianna Sisters was taken off store shelves. So the answer is yes, this is plagiarism. Next, this game is called Casey Munchkin. Can you guess what game it was inspired by, just from the title? How about with the gameplay? You're right, it was Pac-Man. According to Atari, Casey Munchkin was banned from being sold. So yes, again, this was plagiarism. Alright, you might have a better idea now of what game clones look like. Let's take a look at the history of game plagiarism. You might think that video game cloning is just a 21st century thing, but in fact, it's not. Let's go back in time, way back. Think of the oldest game, the first game to have ever existed. If you're like me, you probably thought of video game Pong, which released for Atari in 1972. Pong is widely regarded as the first commercially viable video game because it earned Atari millions of dollars, putting them on the map as they released one of the first at-home consoles, allowing everyone to play Pong at home. Video games took off from that point, and plagiarism also took off from the point. Wait, what? I've just been informed by my producer that plagiarism didn't start after Pong. For video games, it started with Pong. But how's that possible? Pong is like the first video game. How could they copy something before it? Or was Pong the first video game? Well, video games can actually be traced all the way back to the 1950s, with one of the first games using an oscilloscope as the screen. The game was called Tennis for Two. Does this look familiar? I know, how ironic, knowing that the first ever recognized video game was indeed a ripoff. So why does plagiarism exist in games? Honestly, it's not glamorous, but it's kind of innovatable. As IGN's Nathan Grayson puts it, plagiarism is a giant grey area. Yes, games are art, but they're also products, and where there's money to be made, there's money to be taken. Yeah, I get it, money's boring, and it's easy to blame capitalism for everything. Greedy businessman, classic villain. But here's the thing, commercialization is the fate of almost every game. And full disclosure, our group is full of business majors, and so this is kind of our jam. Don't get me wrong though, games are indeed artworks. They should be more than just cash cows. But at the end of the day, it is players' wallet that decide what kind of game will survive. Take a look at the Battle Royale boom. After PUBG exploded, studios jumped in. Call of Duty, Battlefield, and Fortnite. When a genre gets its attention, it inevitably leads to a wave of similar games. In 2024 alone, Fortnite generated approximately $5.5 billion in revenue, reflecting its continued popularity and effective monetization strategies. In the end, only games that are well made and have a large player base who are willing to pay for it survives the market. Which raises the question, do players care if these games borrow ideas, or are they just happy to have more ways to play? Because in business, originality isn't the top priority, the quality is. If a game's fun, polished, and performs well, players don't care if it was inspired by something else, they care if it works. That's why the market favors big developers with resources to polish a genre, and smaller studios has to have clever twists to stand out. But with that comes the usual suspects, lazy reskins, asset theft, and quick cash grabs. Honestly, it's a messy reality. But like it or not, capitalism has shaped the game industry, and it's not hitting pause anytime soon. So now that we have a slight idea of the incentive behind cloning viral games, how do we actually define plagiarism in the court of law? Shouldn't the interest of game developers and well-known IPs be protected so that justice still exists? You know, both commercially and morally, because as players, it's really a pity to see the endless time and effort of our beloved game devs go to waste. Well, in most jurisdictions, including the US, copyright law doesn't protect ideas, only the expression of those ideas. It's called idea expression and distinction. For example, shooting a space rock with a spaceship, it's an idea. Asteroid and meteors both use it, but only the original art, sound, and code from Atari's version was protected. So when Mino copied Tetris block for block, lawsuit. What about Valorant? When Valorant released in 2020, it didn't exactly hide its inspirations. The game was quickly dubbed as CSGO meets Overwatch, and if you've played it, you know that's not wrong. The abilities from Overwatch. Gunplay, nearly a CSGO clone, and the diffuse mechanics, also CS. But here's the twist, no one sued Riot. Why? Because Riot created their own expression of the tactical shooter. They used different maps, characters, voice acting, and story. It wasn't a copy-paste job, it was an evolution. And here's where the law sides with Riot, because no one gets to monopolize a game idea. Just like Pokémon doesn't own the concept of catching monsters, Valve doesn't own the defuse the bomb mechanics. These are mechanics, systems, not content, and that's the critical distinction. So, as long as the clone game avoid directly copying the source code, stealing the art asset, or committing intellectual property infraction, these are otherwise considered to be legally acceptable practices. Now, compare that to Palword, Some PALs are original, but the others a little too similar. The outrage isn't purely legal, it's about intent. Did Palword borrow from Pokémon to innovate or to capitalize? Even if the game feels cheap and somewhat unearned to the Pokémon fanboys out there, legally, intent doesn't matter much. If you don't copy protected assets and you change up the expression, you're probably safe.
Sorry for the signal, there's a random Wi-Fi upgrades in the studios. Now I'll take over Jeff's roles and let's continue. If you don't copy protected assets and you change up the expression, you'll probably be saved. But does that mean there's no way to protect original gameplay? Of course not. While gameplay itself isn't protected by copyrights, the developer can still apply for a specific patents to safeguard unique mechanics. One of the most well-known examples is Konami's patent for 3D camera behavior. The patent describes a mechanic where when the camera is pushed against the wall in a 3D game, it moves behind the wall and makes the wall transparent. Other developers who want to use this must pay Konami, so there's many studios found ways to work around it. Take Dark Souls for examples, its camera often act weird in corners. That's partly because they are avoiding the exact same patterns. A single pattern like that can have such a big influence. Imagining if core gameplay mechanics were patterned too. And the situation can get slightly messy when it's involved the conflicts of interest between capitalism, game designers, and ultimately the gaming communities. So, as you can probably see, this topic can get a little bit too complicated under the field of laws. Enough of me talking, let's go back to the Palword case and see what the community has to say about it.
With tensions high in the gaming world, we hit the street to get the real opinions from real players. Is Nintendo protecting its legacy? Or just punching down on indie innovation? Let's hear what the community has to say.
Look, this isn't about Pokemon being sacred. This is about Nintendo seeing someone else innovate and reacting with a lawsuit instead of creativity. Like, Pocket Pair built something edgy, new, and wildly successful. Something that, get this, gamers actually wanted to play. And Nintendo only raised an eyebrow once it blew up. Almost like Nintendo is trying to say, yeah, no one can sue us for stealing other people's stuff, but then we will sue other people for stealing our stuff that we stole from someone else. Nintendo logic.
It's a ripoff. You throw a ball and you summon a creature. That's our thing. Nintendo built an ecosystem.
But they're compromising and changing.
Whatever. It is what it is. This is a mother gonna die and go to hell. You mother.
Sorry for the accident earlier. Now we can move on. What's your opinion on Palword? What's your opinion on Palword?
They did what Nintendo never had to got to do. Evolve, add challenge. Variety is something new. Nintendo trying to destroy that. Because Palword works. And that's terrifying to the old monopoly.
So you side with Palword?
没有制度啊。
That's it for community wanted to say. Let's bring it back to Jeff.
Well, there you have it. And thanks to all the interviewers. Whether you're Team Nintendo or Team Palword, one thing's clear. This is about more than monster and guns. It's about who owns creativity in gaming and who get the defined too similar. In the end, the verdict of whether game plagiarism should be punished and to what extent really rests on us, the user of the product, not the court. So next time you see a game that feels like another, ask yourself, is it tribute, a twist, or just a knockoff with a shiny skin? That said, I'm not asking you to stop resisting plagiarism. In fact, under current law, plagiarists often get away with it, and many original creators are dragged down in endless litigation. This is the world of gaming development today. Part creativity, part capitalism, all happen in a legal sandbox filled with lava traps. Let's turn our attention back to the lawsuit between Pokémon and Palword, where Judge Kawamoto delivered the final verdicts to the case. Please, reporter on the scene.
This case remains unresolved. To prevent future harm, I order interim modification to Palword. First, creature captured. You are to redesign the method of capturing creatures to ensure it is clear, distinct from the Pokeball style approach. Second, summoning mechanics. You must remove any use of throwable spherical device. Find an alternative method for summoning that cannot be mistaken for Nintendo's design. And finally, creature writing. The writing functionality must also be modified. This change must be implemented within 60 days. This is not the final ruling. Further hearing will assess the validity of the patent and possible infringements. Everyone understood? Court earned!
And so, the battle paused, not with a final truth, but a temporary truth. Do you think that Poképair got what it deserved? But beyond the courtroom, a deeper question lies. The existing regulation for combating plagiarism in gameplay can truly be a double-edged sword. At the heart of the issue lies the nature of creativity and art. There's always a delicate balance between inspiration and imitation, between borrowing a concept and copying its expressions. On one hand, copyright laws are virtual for protecting original works and encouraging innovations. On the other, overly aggressive enforcement can steal creativities, discourage new interpretations, and obstruct the organic evolution of genres built on iterations. Imagine a gaming world where there's only one RPG or FPS title is legally allowed to exist. How unimaginable that would be. Ultimately, as players, we should advocate for a culture where originality is celebrated, but not at the cost of creative freedom. Game developers has always thrived by standing on the shoulders of giants, exploring, adapting, and innovating. No studios create in vacuum, and so I believe, with the help of artificial intelligence,
This is an AI free course. Shut up, David's not gonna like it.
excuse me. Ultimately, players just want better games, not to chain every developer to the fear of being labeled a copycat. We resist plagiarism that to gatekeep creativities, but to push back against lazy reskin and low-effort clones. And at the end, the most powerful safeguard for originality isn't always the courtroom, it's the community. Let us know your opinion towards this issue and feel free to comment in our Remaking Reality Discord channel, share your thoughts. Click the like button, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you next time.